start, we have a special guest this morning, John Irwin from Irwin Legal, who's going to talk about all the transfers, all the documents, all the things that we need when we need to transfer our property, conveyancer versus solicitor. So yeah, and John's come off the river this morning, so thank you so much.
They couldn't. Good morning. They can't believe that 55 minutes ago I was in the Darling River.
Did you catch a fish though?
I caught a carp that big.
And you before it was that big. Every time you say it.
Oh, no, I've got a different audience here now.
Yeah. You got some people to impress. So John, we've got some questions for you today, and it's mainly around about real estate and the legal side of things. But first of all, what's your, how long have you been a solicitor for? When did you come to Mildura? Give us your story. Briefly.
Briefly, yeah. I charge by the minute, mate. Yeah. I came here in 1971 and set up my own law practice with my brother-in-law, Keith Richards. And so for the last 50 years, I've been basically doing commercial work, property work. I'd like to think I've made every mistake there is, but that ain't the truth, I can promise you, because law is very, very complex. Things change all the time, whether it's legislation. It's a profession where you've got to really keep up to date all the time, literally learning. Every few days there's something I've never come across before.
Yeah, right.
And that's the challenge, and I think to me it gives us the buzz out of law. Actually, there's an excitement factor because everyone who comes in the door has a different personality. You're like a chameleon, you're changing your personality to win the confidence of the people that you're dealing with. And it might be a little old lady whose husband died 2 days earlier, the next is a wheat farmer. So the essence of law is that it is complex, but it's very, very interesting to
meeting different people.
Every day.
I think that's what I love about my job too, is you're always meeting different people. And that's sometimes you are dealing with emotional scenarios, but
it's always emotional because buying a house or selling a house, particularly the buying, often it's the biggest thing you'll do in your life. Your first house, even the second. Marriage is a big adventure, but I tell you what, when you're borrowing a couple $100,000 and you've got to make it work and you've got to make certain that you get the right loan, as you know, Mark, is one of the biggest things in your life, and you have to make certain that you perform. And there is pressure on you to do it. And but I do, Mark. It's the meeting people, and that you don't have to, I say to my girls, you don't have to be super intelligent, but you've got to be very good at communicating with the people who the client is, the vendor, the purchaser, someone making a will.
Absolutely.
That is, and it's the same in your business, you know that too. That is the name of the game. That is the art, that is the craft. It is winning the confidence of people and giving them the assurance that you know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't.
Oh, hey, there's always lunchtime when you quickly you research and think, oh shit, that's the worst thing. There's a new active part of it last week. So you ring the client up and say, look, I've been thinking about your problem. Look, I've studied it, I've researched it, there's a bit of a change. I'm very impressed there.
Very cool.
So after nearly 40 years, I guess, you recently started John Irwin Legal, which is going really, really well, really busy, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic to be your own boss. I was for 30 years, then sold out to other partners. And now we've set up my own law practice again at the age of 71. It's lovely putting your bum on the toaster again. I mean, the buck stops with you, your focus is giving me a total new lease of life.
That's
absolutely, because you've got to make the
And you're allowed to go fishing still.
Look, and drink a few wines last night.
That's what life's about.
Exactly.
It is, and I've got fantastic staff. The 4 girls I have with me, Denise has been with me 38 years. Fantastic. And her daughter Kate and the other 2, Beck and Courtney, we are a family. It is just
amazing.
I was saying to my former partner, Keith Richards, last night, he was with me, and we were talking about 20 years ago when we were partners for 30 years, how great it was to be in control of having quality, friendly staff around you. They keep you young, in my case, because they treat me like you wouldn't believe. No respect. So I keep saying, hey, you've got to show some respect. What they say to me is it's unbelievable.
Well, I deal with the girls there all the time, and they're brilliant. They're very good at what they do.
But they were laughing at it. And
That's beautiful.
what the clients they know. They walk into that office and they've said to me, gee, this feels lovely here. They can hear the laughter, the chitter-chatter.
Good culture.
Oh,
Absolutely.
lovely.
Yeah.
And,
That's great, John.
they will never know what I'm saying about them. And
Don't care.
as long as nobody tells them,
Hopefully they don't have Facebook.
no one has to tell them because I want a pay rise next week.
That's right.
So tell us, John, when people come to see you about property, they're soliciting when they're selling or buying a property, what are the general things that come? What are they confused about? What are they worried about?
I think it's the process. It's daunting not knowing what it is. So I sit down right at the start, and often Mark comes in and the other agents come in. You actually tell them what that process is. There'll be, if you're a vendor, we have to prepare a Section 32 statement, which has in it the title, the details of the rates, any covenants, easements.
A lot of legal jargon too, which can be confusing, right?
It is, and it is different now, and maybe we'll get to that in a few minutes. But it's to tell them step by step what will happen. The purchaser will have to get a pest certificate, a building certificate. It will be subject to them getting a loan, and so we'll have to tell you what when they have to get that loan by, and then if they have a mortgage, you explain to them, well, you owe money still. We need to know how much you're still owing. We need to contact your bank to get a release of that mortgage, to discharge that mortgage. And so it's important that they know what will happen, the timeline. And if you act for the purchaser, you explain to them that, look, here is a Section 32 from the other solicitor or conveyancer, and this is what it says. Now, you have an easement along the back, but that's fine. It's for sewage or drainage. There's a covenant to say that the house must be 50% brick or a tiled roof. There are so many things to it, nuances there, and it is important to explain to the purchaser what their rights are. What can they do? Can they call off now? When they have to get their finance by. So it's very important that they know when it comes to the settlement time, what do they have to do? Is there a transfer? Do we have to sign a transfer? They will have a bank. So the same thing, we need to know who their bank is.
You liaise with the bank a lot, don't you?
We have to, we liaise with every single bank that is there. We need to know from them what the process is. When will they have the mortgage documents ready to sign? Do they want to give them to us for the purchaser to sign?
It's holding their hand through it, right?
It is. It's holding their hand. And look, one yesterday, it goes up the bush, I had a phone call from a guy who he has bought a property due to settle. The house is a mess. The person has left it a mess. And he wanted to know, sure, I was sitting in the shade of a tree with a fishing rod. He wanted to know, what do I do? So I talked him through it. And that's one of the biggest problems. What happens, and you know, Mark, frequently, that the house is left in a mess. What are your rights? And quite often, you don't have those rights, or if you have your rights, it's hard to enforce them because you have to go to court. And so often you have to do a bit like a doctor who's saying, no, mate, you are sick. We have to say, look, yes, the law might be on your side, but it's too costly. So often, a purchase, and again, this is the art of explaining where they will feel hurt. They want this house to be sparkling clean, and it's a pigsty.
I think that's up to us as agents to coach our vendors that are leaving a home to ensure, and this is a conversation I have with every vendor at the start of the campaign, is just picture when you're leaving, you want to make sure that the house is in pristine condition the way you'd expect to find it. Mate, you don't want the buyer going in there and having to clean cupboards before they move in or vacuum so I think it's a big responsibility on us as agents to ensure that the vendors know their responsibility. Now there isn't a cut and dry rule about this, about the cleanliness of a home, but I think it's up to us as agents to make sure that the buyers walk in and are, getting a house of their dreams in the condition that it should be, and that's what I try and do as well.
And unfortunately,
doesn't always happen.
It'll be 5 out of 100 that will walk in. And one case I had about 3 months ago, the person only owned the house for about 6 months. They cleaned it up as they found it, but in fact, when they bought the house, it was a pigsty. Out in the sheds in the backyard. they didn't like the place, they decided they'd move on. So they actually sold it as they found it.
As they found it.
And I said to my people, look, sure, it should be clear, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, horrible, and there's not much we could do about it.
Yeah.
That's one of the nastiest
It's
situations.
the worst part, I think.
It is, and yeah.
So, John, what's the main difference between a conveyance and a solicitor? Because I get this question a lot, so if you can clarify.
Look, conveyancer have done a bit of a course. Most of them are secretaries, conveyancing secretaries who have worked for some time with lawyers and have picked up a really good skill and a basic knowledge about conveyancing. And I think most of them are very, very good. Quite a few of them are in fact girls that I've trained over a 50-year period, and they're competition to lawyers. But the key difference is that when there is a really thorny problem, the conveyancer doesn't have the qualifications to handle it.
Yeah.
So they then have to say to the client, look, I'm sorry, we can't handle this, you'll have to go and find a solicitor. Now that is a double whammy in terms of legal costs. And again, it might only be 1 in 100, 1 in 80, where there is a problem where it does require the knowledge of a solicitor, a trained lawyer. Weirdly, it happened last week. We had a situation where, the vendor, they had to have had a solicitor.
Yeah.
The titles office itself had made a big mistake 20 years ago. They had issued a title for a road, and it was meant to have been transferred to the council. It hadn't. So
someone owned the council road.
That was the original.
On
Effectively,
paper.
it went on effectively. So what happened is that, sure enough, he was the road, and the guy who subdivided died, and in the estate it was transferred to his executrix, who then sold it to my client. And the titles office let that title go through.
Wow.
Now, it should never. And it was part of a very big $2 million deal. This was $28,000 for the road. That was the clincher. Now, we spent, Kate at work, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
To try and get the titles office to understand it was their mistake.
Yeah.
And this is what the law was. And so I was on the phone to the titles office. Kate was a lawyer, did the same. We finalised it on Friday morning after, I'd say, a solid 2 weeks. The vendor, there was penalty interest involved. It was,
So that's the difference between having someone.
Yeah.
So if you're in your instance, John, the costs aren't that different, are they?
No.
And that's the benefit of having a solicitor behind you in the same office. So you might have one of the girls doing the conveyancing, but if something gets a bit messy, you're there to back them up.
Yeah, that's right. Look, the conveyances are good. It's when is the problem. Now, our costs, I know our costs are no different than the conveyances.
Yeah.
Because we've pitched it at that level to say, if you want someone who has the legal knowledge, then by all means, look, we can offer the legal knowledge plus doing that conveyancing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to bag conveyancers because they do a very good job.
Yeah, of course.
But by and large, they're great. And we work exceptionally well together.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about law, is that by and large, the conveyancers and the lawyers, if there's a mistake, we tell them there's a mistake. It's a very good relationship to have between the lawyers themselves and with the conveyancers. So, which is just as well, because otherwise we'd be being sued left, right, and
That's it.
So,
But, I mean, that's the beauty of it, is it doesn't matter how complicated or how easy the transaction is. It's better to have someone like you to go through everything.
Having the
to make sure
conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
it is. And the minute something goes wrong, straight away, you know the law, so you tell the client, these are your rights. Believe me. Look, in 50 years, I have made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
And
We're human.
well, yeah, but law is so complex. It is whether it's superannuation law or taxation law.
Yeah.
It's all part and parcel of conveyancing, company law, trust law, matrimonial law. It all comes into, at some stage, into conveyancing transactions.
Yeah.
And it's a very law.
It can be daunting.
It is challenging, and Yeah, but I love it.
It's beautiful. I've got a question about deposits. So when someone pays a deposit, especially for first home buyers, when a deposit is paid, where does it go to? Does it go to the bank? Does it go to you guys, in a trust? What happens?
It usually will either go to the agent, the vendor's agent, into
Right.
a trust account,
Yeah.
or to the solicitor acting for the vendor into a trust account,
Yeah.
and it stays there. No one gets interest on it. It is there until the settlement takes place, except if it becomes unconditional, then the vendor can say, now it's unconditional, I would like the deposit released to me.
Section 27, yeah.
It's called a section
Right,
27. And sometimes if there's a mortgage, it's got to go towards the mortgage, or
But you can get that early release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Big change in the legal world, in conveyancing, was it probably 12 months ago, there was the introduction of pexa. So obviously it can be a bit complex, the whole settlement process for buyers and sellers. What's pexa done for the industry?
Okay, just to explain to people who are listening in, PEXA is a company, property exchange. It's cloud-based, and PEXA was a company set up by the 4 big banks and Macquarie. Paper titles have now disappeared, and so when there is a property settlement, it is done on cloud through PEXA and PEXA agents. And I explain all about PEXA right from the start. There's got to be the lawyer or conveyancer has to identify the client with a verification of identity with passports, driver's licences. It was all set up because there was so much fraud going on in the United States, then the United Kingdom, and then Australia. There was so much dishonesty, and it was getting rife. People losing millions, and so they said, enough of this. The lawyers will have to identify the client, and if I have a client from China buying a property here, I have to have that client in China sitting beside a lawyer with an iPad where he holds up his passport, I photograph it, the solicitor takes a photo of it, I photograph the client. We check every way that this person is who he says he is.
Yep.
And the same with people. It doesn't matter where they are in the world, because then the buck stops with the lawyer. He's verified the client. Then the vendor or purchaser signs a client authority, and so the lawyer then signs everything from then on. Apart from right at the end, there'll be a small document for a purchaser to sign. So by and large, what PEXA is now cloud-based. So right from, and this is again the communications business, is that we now have to talk and explain PEXA to every single vendor or purchaser. Now, I'll confess, because I know it's just between the 3 of us, it is the
Secrets.
The secret between us, boy and girl.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get onto PEXA. I haven't got some clue.
Yeah.
But I have girls.
It's called delegation.
It's
isn't it?
delegation.
Yes, that's
I can talk the talk, but God, I can't walk the walk because it's cloud-based.
It's technology
It's
now, right?
technology, and people my age, and my kids say I should have come into this century, let alone 2020. It is so technical, making certain this PEXA business, all the information is put onto cloud.
Yeah.
The vendor sets it up, he invites the purchaser, the banks. It is beyond me, but not girls or people who are very skilled in PEXA.
So gone are the days where the conveyancers and the solicitors have to go to the bank and sit there around a table and settle the property.
All paper titles have now disappeared.
Yeah.
And so for me now, that we start off between about communication and talking people through it. In the past, we never had to do it. It was all just signed up and life went on its way, and the purchase came in later on down the track. Now, with the verification of identity, you have to do it. You should do it right at the start.
Yeah.
Because if something goes wrong, it's the solicitor. It'll always come back to me.
Right.
Yes.
The mistakes come back to me.
Yeah.
But I know I've got the best who are making sure PEXA works and purchase works well. And that, I was talking about this road reserve business. That's where you need the lawyer, because PEXA was talking as well to the titles office and saying, mate, you're going to come on board with this title. You might not want to give it to us, but we want it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the titles office said, "Okay, you win." It was a big win.
Yeah.
It's
And-
a real safety net for all parties, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
It is. So it's yeah.
I think at the moment in real estate, you've got a lot of buyers, a lot of first home buyers jumping in head first because they get the government grants, they're hearing all this money coming from the government to help them build, and honestly, more often than not, they're jumping in so quick that they probably haven't thought about the process and where they're buying or why they should be doing, and particularly the legal side of things. So having someone that they can go through from a legal point of view to make sure they've ticked every box is crucial.
Yeah, it is that the first home buyers, particularly at the moment with
It's changing too as well.
with COVID and the pressures and particularly up here because I can see Mildura absolutely booming. I keep saying to people, COVID has been a disaster in a global sense, in an Australian sense, but for Mildura, this will be seen 10, 20 years from now. This will be seen to be our gold rush. Ballarat had one, Bendigo had one. This is our gold rush. You have 700,000 people in Melbourne aged 60 upwards who will either retired or will retire shortly. They do not want to be in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And if you're retired, where is the best, safest, friendliest place to be? This will be Mildura. I was in Ballarat, as you know, Mark, last week talking to a guy down there. He's an electrician. He's moving up to Mildura with his mates. All his trading mates say, "We're coming, get out of Ballarat.
Wow.
We're coming up to Mildura." Now,
I've noticed just an influx of phone calls in the past week or two, particularly last week since the Ring of Steel came down yesterday. One gentleman I spoke to is from Eltham or somewhere around in Melbourne, and he's saying, "I just want to get out of the cold and come to the heat." So the closest place, the best place for heat in Victoria is Mildura. So
vouch for that.
It's definitely hot. It can be quite warm up here. But yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting part of what we see in real estate over the next year is the migration of people from down south.
Yeah. Look, I think in COVID there are many losers.
Yeah.
But there have been winners and will be winners.
Like
Yeah.
Bunnings.
And like Bunnings, and, but Mildura will be one of the winners.
Yeah.
It's apart from the hospitality tourism side, which has had a disastrous effect there, that will bounce back.
Yeah.
But the rest of this town has gone on like you would not believe over the last 12 months. Amazing how this town has just.
You're seeing it.
Well, nationally, the spotlight is on us from a capital growth point of view. So a lot of different outlets are talking about Mildura as a place to buy because of the growth. So, yeah, I think it's going to be some really good times, and it's been it's been busy, hasn't it, John? Like from obviously in the legal and the real estate, they work hand in hand. So it's been very busy.
There was a blip in March, April, but since then we have been busier, and now not just me personally, but the conveyancing predominant law firms dealing with it, they have been flat out. It is just you shake your head and think, the rest of the world seems to be suffering, but Mildura, the buoyancy there is you can sense it.
Yeah.
Talking to the agents, they're all of them are ebullient as to how Mildura is coming out of it. So I think I don't think I know we will come out of it better than most other regional cities, if not all of them, because of the tyranny of distance is something we've always talked about in the past. We're that far from Melbourne.
Yeah.
They talked about this tyranny of distance. That tyranny of distance has become our best friend.
Yeah. Good point.
It has swung around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at us sitting all up here, 600 kilometres away from you guys down in Melbourne.
Infection rates. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Jeez, mate, what's this?
Masks, what masks?
But look, I am.
I agree.
I'm very confident
Yeah.
that for people, and look, hospitality will bounce back very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to All Seasons Jodie on Friday night, and she was telling me how quickly it's come back. And more so now with that ring of steel coming
Yeah.
down. Yeah, it'll bounce back. It'll,
really will.
It'll come back with the
Yeah.
dimensions here.
So we've discussed that obviously, you know, vendors need to catch up, get a Section 32 done before they hit the market. Purchasers come in and discuss what they're getting into when they're looking at a contract. You can review a contract for them. They buy the property, they go through the process, they get the pest inspections, they tick it off. It becomes unconditional. We move to settlement day. What do buyers and vendors expect settlement day? Because a lot of people sort of stand there just going, what do we do?
Yeah, what
Yeah,
happens?
It's a funny scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the vendors it's easy. We simply say on this particular date,
At this time,
the pexa, the computers will recognise everything's in line,
Yeah.
and the money goes straight through pexa from the purchaser's bank account into the vendor's bank account or to their bank. We never see, the lawyers don't have a role in that anymore. We
Yeah.
never see a check. From a purchaser's point of view, again, we have to tell them what we're doing with this pexa on this particular date or a few days before. You'll have to sign a document called a duties online, which says, this is the final stage. Yes, I know this amount of money will come out of my account for stamp duty. Now, that's the only thing that when we say to the purchaser, you'll get an email, you'll get something to say, duties online, you've got to have it signed, and then you know that on this date, and it can take place with the computers. We used to do a settlement, say, at 10 o'clock or 3:30. Nowadays, the computer will click into it sometime during the day or even in the late evening. 9 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
we'll get emails, so yep, all done.
we've got a late settlement
Wow.
yesterday. Yeah.
And you think, oh, I forgot about that. I knocked off
Yeah,
at 5 o'clock.
yeah, that happened to me yesterday.
The computer doesn't go to sleep.
It's
Yeah.
such an automatic process now.
It is absolutely automatic when they recognise that everybody's signed off and it's happened.
Yeah.
So we just need to say to the purchaser, we'll tell you when it's settled. In fact, I think they get an email probably as well that it's settled.
Some banks send an email.
Yeah, the bank's told. So that's when the furniture removal vans
That's
will be
it.
coordinated for that particular day.
Well, that's when we can hand over the keys legally. Once we're notified by the solicitors, we can actually then hand the keys over to the purchaser, which is always a very exciting time, and then they're into it.
And then it's the next chapter
Yeah.
for everybody. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining
Thanks,
us,
John.
John. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
Are you going back to the river now or not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to go catch the
Hey,
big fish.
I've
that
got a
one.
client who thinks I'm.
Oh.
He's waiting for me.
Oh,
But this has been
we'll
far
let
more
you go.
important.
Yeah.
And this is the fun part.
Yeah, it is fun. It is. Thank you so
Just
much.
quickly, John used to do a talk segment on 3MA. When was this?
Oh, 40 years ago.
Yeah, so
Oh,
you used
really?
to jump on radio
Yeah.
and a call-in session where people would ring up and ask questions,
cool.
and John would answer them, and so he's really a bit of a celebrity. This guy.
Yeah.
And this will reinvigorate.
It
that.
will,
You never
it
know,
will.
It's going to a lot of people. You don't understand.
Well, people have been listening to this. I thought this was a dummy. I thought we were doing a dummy.
No, this
Oh,
is
shit.
live. Don't swear.
It's been brilliant. Thank you very much for jumping on.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you want to ask some questions, you know where to get us, where to reach us. And yeah,
If you want to get in touch with John, just hit us up and we can put you
in the right
in
direction.
his path.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and Mark's not a bad estate agent either.
Oh, yeah.
He scrubs up all right.
Yeah.
It's all right. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
See you guys.
Right, I better go and see my client.
Oops. He's